Hello and welcome to our...
Wait, start again.
Okay.
Okay.
Hi. Hi. And
Hi.
welcome to our podcast. We are on episode 4.
Quattro.
You need to tell them what it's called.
Oh, it's called, our podcast is called 26 to Life, because after 26 years of friendship, we have been friends for longer than a life sentence. Wow.
Today, I actually feel like I've done a life sentence of hard labour, but we are powering through, and Rose is going to cheer me up with a great story time.
It's going to be a great one today.
Enrage me and kind of wake me up a little bit. Every week, Rosie and I tell each other a different true crime story that the other one has not heard, and we get really angry about it.
Yeah.
So,
we just share all of our thoughts and feelings. We kind of don't have filters, which makes it really interesting at times.
Yeah, it also makes editing it really interesting because I have to make sure that you guys still want to listen to us. So, Rose, let's go.
Let's do it. Okay, so today I'm going to tell you about Carol Morgan. This story starts all the way back in 1983, and I've not looked into a story that is that old before. So I found it quite hard because you can't really access newspapers from that time. Now everything was being posted online. A lot of the things that I found were updates that were posted now that were recapping past events. So I found it really hard to get that true source of information from back in the 1980s. So this story actually starts in the 1970s when Carol Morgan... No, well, her name wasn't Carol Morgan then because she got married. But Carol and Alan had met in a gingerbread group. Do you know what gingerbread group is? Have you ever heard of that? It's basically like gingerbread groups. I can't tell you why they're called gingerbread groups, but they were founded to support single parents and their children. So it encouraged...
I have heard of this. It's a charity.
Yes.
Called Gingerbread.
Yes. I didn't realise it was still a thing. I'd literally never heard of it, but I also am not a single mother, so... That's probably why. I
think now it's more like charity access support. You can meet other single parents.
And it's like a support group kind of thing for people to share. From a small amount of research that I did on gingerbread groups, it kind of said that it provided means for single parents to meet and share the highs and lows of life of being a single parent. So it just encouraged people to stick together and have that kind of support system that you often need as a single parent.
100%.
I can understand. And it can be really, really tough if you don't have the people around you.
And also I think, when you are talking to other parents and they've got two of them doing it, it's very hard to relate and to be able to say, oh yeah, I can do that, or no, I can't do that, because your life is just completely different. So I actually think it's a great thing.
Yeah, no, for sure. So Carol happened to be in this gingerbread group after her previous husband had left her, and she had 2 kids from that previous marriage. Alan didn't have any children, so I'm not sure what he was doing as a part of this group, or if he was just wanting to be a part of the community. I don't know. But anyway, they met in this gingerbread group in Swindon. Carol has 2 kids. Alan has none. So they soon got married in 1977. And in 1979, they opened a convenience store in Linsdale, which is in Bedfordshire. And they named it... Well, there's one... Someone said that it was called Morgan's Store, and another one said it was called like Food Mart or something. But I'm just going to call it Morgan's Store because it is the store of Carol and Alan Morgan. So it just makes sense. And then everything seemed to be going well until in July 1981, so 2 years after they opened this store, Carol admitted to some family members that Alan had been having an affair, and she'd found out about it. They'd spoken about it, and he had said that he was actually ending it and he wasn't interested in having this affair anymore. And Carol spoke to Citizens Advice Bureau. They arranged for them to see a family, like a marriage counsellor, in August, and everything seemed to be normal other than that. And she was eager to work through them. I didn't know you could do that. Again, I don't know if that's like a now thing or if this is something that was... Again, 1980s. I thought
Citizens Advice Bureau was like... I didn't realise they could help you with things like marriage counselling.
I didn't know that either. Or maybe she just kind of said, maybe it was to do with the fact that they owned a business together and she didn't really know what she was allowed to do, and then they referred her and said, oh, maybe you could do counselling. I'm not really sure the logistics of that. Like I said, it was really hard to find information about the early stages of this story. So this was all just basically what her family members had told reporters. So I think namely her cousins that she was quite close with had given a lot of reports on this side of the story. So they were due to see a marriage counsellor in August. But on Thursday, the 13th of August in 1981, it seemed to be a normal day all round. They opened the store, they were doing all their normal chores, and then in the evening, when Carol was working at the store, Alan offered to take both the kids, Dean, who's 14, and Jane, 12, to the cinema for a double bill of at the movies. I don't know.
So his stepchildren.
So his stepchildren, yes.
Okay.
And they left at around 5 p.m. and it was a double bill at the cinema. So they were gone for more than a few hours.
Can you still do that?
I think for special movies, like I've seen that they've sometimes do like double
like Lord
bills
of the Rings.
Yeah.
I'd love to go and do that.
I'm sure, especially in London, I'm sure that there are things like that. They especially do like when there's like an anniversary of the movies and stuff like that. I think I saw one. They do a Harry Potter one like last year for an anniversary or something. But
that's a bit too long.
Yeah, maybe.
Lord of the Rings.
I think a couple of times I've seen when they've brought out a sequel and the first one was a while before, they'll do a double bill back-to-back screening. So again, I couldn't find what movie they were going to see, but I was pretty curious because I like movies and going to the cinema, but couldn't find the information. So they left at around 5 p.m. and they didn't get back around 10:30. So the way that their house is that they own the shop underneath, and they're what?
You just said, and they didn't get back they didn't get back at around 10:30, and I'm like, okay, what time did they get back then, Rose?
And they didn't get back until 10:30.
Oh God, the humour is low bar today. Like we don't have a lot in us. I don't have a lot to give, so I have to find it where I can. But you can mock my shopping bag eye bag.
You literally don't have anything. Stop it. So they didn't get back until around 10:30 p.m. And the way that their house is that they own the shop on the bottom floor, and then they live above the shop, which is pretty common for things like that. So they had their whole apartment and living areas upstairs. So Alan told Dean, his stepson, to go upstairs to make a cup of tea, while Jane put her bike away in the shed. So Dean went upstairs there's like a different entrance into the house around the side of the shop, so you don't always have to go through the shop. And then Alan went through to check on Carol in the shop to make sure that everything was okay.
So the shop's still open?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, right.
And so when Dean went upstairs, he found their dog, Simon. Simon the dog. I'm not sure how I feel about that.
I don't like that.
It didn't specify the breed, which I was sad about, but they said he was a large black dog. And he
Labrador.
Usually had... That's what I thought, because some people
Simon the Labrador.
I mean, Jack wants to name our next dog Tony, so I think I'd choose Simon over Tony.
That at least is funny. Like, it's like such a man's name. Oi, Tony, come here.
Definitely not. Definitely not.
Leo wanted to call Arlo Dinosaur.
Yeah, I love that.
I know, you did. I said no.
I want to name my next dog Dino.
That's cute. That
is cute, but you went with Arlo because it was a dinosaur in a cartoon or something?
Yeah, because his favourite film at the time was A Good Dinosaur. So he wanted to call him Dinosaur. So I was like, no, we'll name him Arlo after The Good Dinosaur.
Okay, I feel like
Arlo
that's a good compromise.
suits him so well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, he's not a dinosaur.
He's not a dinosaur. He's an idiot. Arlo.
Yeah. Arlo the idiot. Cute. Oh, I love him so much.
But not anyway, that if you're called Arlo or have children called Arlo, you're an idiot. It's just my dog.
He is just a Labrador. That is an idiot.
Yeah.
For sure. So anyway, Dean found their dog, Simon, upstairs, locked in Jane's bedroom, which was really weird because he usually has one at the house. He usually goes around the house. There are people who have said that he used to be around the shop. There was one person who even said that he once went into the shop when there wasn't anyone downstairs, and Simon was actually a little aggressive towards him because it was almost like he was guarding the place. So everyone knew him, and it was quite
He's a
well
shop dog,
known. He
like a
was
pub
very
dog.
much a shop
The
dog.
shop
So it
dog,
was,
yeah.
yeah, so it was really weird for him to be locked in Jane's bedroom. So he just let him out and didn't really think anything of it. But when Alan went through to check on Carol, the shop was empty and she didn't answer when he was calling her name. So he was looking around trying to find her, and then finally he found her in the storeroom, which is like at the back of the store, and she was dead in the storeroom.
Oh, wow. Jesus. That came out of nowhere.
Just threw that out there. So sorry.
He found her, but she was dead.
But yeah, she was dead.
Oh, my life. Do you know what? My brother
curveball.
did that to me when the cat died. And our cat went missing, Thomas. And he says to me, he comes running up the stairs, and Thomas was my cat, and running up the stairs, good news, we found the cat. Starts leaving, and I was like, oh my God, we found the cat. And then he goes, oh, bad news is it's dead. That's what you just did to me with Carol.
I mean,
I feel like Carol. Oh, she was dead.
She was dead. This shouldn't be funny. I'm sorry. I need to be better at the storytelling malarkey.
Yeah,
I thought I was going to
funny.
get a little bit of a surprise in there. You know, keep you on your toes. That's what you wanted, right? Keep you awake.
We're doing a true crime podcast about murder.
Yeah, and everything I've told you so far is true.
And I'm expecting someone to die. I just wasn't expecting it to be like, and I found her. I thought it was going to be like, and there'd been an intruder, and then he comes back 2 nights late. Yeah, anyway, I made up a whole story for that in my head. I'm going to be honest.
No, she was just dead in the storeroom.
Okay.
But I couldn't find much info on the following sequence of events, but Dean, the son, he later gave a statement that he heard Alan on the phone before he came back upstairs, and this was presumably a call to the police as well as to a friend who came to collect the children and take them away from the house, because obviously this was now a crime scene. So it seemed pretty standard. There weren't any notes about Alan's behaviour after that or the sequence of events or anything. So I can only assume that there wasn't really anything of significance in that period of time. So it was like an absolute brutal murder. Policemen said that it could have been one of the worst scenes that they had ever seen.
Oh no.
It looked like she had been hacked to death with perhaps a machete or a meat cleaver or something like that. But the weapon wasn't at the scene, so they could only assume at that point in time. There was blood spatter, absolutely.
So it's like slicing.
Yeah, so there was blood spatter like absolutely everywhere, and one report said that her skull had basically been split in two, and even her brain matter was found across the storeroom floor. So it was truly brutal. It wasn't just like a quick and simple death. There had been multiple blows, many of which would. It
doesn't seem like a robbery either. Do you know? Like, it's quite angry.
Interesting you should say that.
Yeah, I stand by that, even though you're kind of disagreeing with me with your tone of voice. But my thing is there's a robber who kills someone because they get caught and they're panicking, and then there is a robber who's also very sadistic. And actually, this isn't like a panicked teen trying to get a bit of money, or you know, this is it. To be able to harm someone in that way.
Yeah, and to go, if you were to be robbing a store, your weapon of choice would likely be like a gun or something like that, you know, because it would just be a simple, quick and easy thing to do if it came to that. But it would also be a threat to be able to say, don't move because I can shoot you. But to take in a machete or a meat cleaver, I don't know.
I disagree. I think it makes it seem less planned and professional, because in this country we can't buy guns easily.
That's so true.
It's illegal. Yeah. So if you were to have a gun, it's likely that you know what you're doing, or you've done this before, or maybe I'm giving people too much credit, but you're involved in stuff like, I wouldn't even know where to start getting a gun.
Yeah, no
so
idea.
to know how to get a gun would be like you're already kind of involved in something. But to go in with a machete or a meat cleaver or a knife, to me seems more like, okay, you're just a you know,
You don't know
somebody
what you're
who's,
doing.
yeah, and you're robbing a convenience store. So it's not like
Yeah.
you're expecting big bucks. You know, this seems more than just a robbery. The person who is, if it's a robbery, then the person who is doing it, I feel like they're not just doing it. There's something with the killing that they're getting from
Yeah.
this, would be my.
Well, and that's the thing as well, because they had also said that because there were so many blows, that some of those had to have been done after she was already on the floor and probably already dead as well. It's not as if it was one strike to kill her. There were 10 to 15 blows that they recorded on her body after the fact. So yeah, it wasn't.
Sorry, do you mean 10 to 15 blows that happened after she would had
No,
died, or 10
just
to 15 in
altogether
total?
in
Right, okay.
total, 10 to 15 blows in total. So, as well as obviously her murder, they could see that the till had been broken into, and a desk that had like a secret drawer, like one of those ones you have to like turn the key and pull it out, and it's at the back kind of thing. There's also a picture of that I'm going to put in the notes that we can have a look at. But all in all, around £435 had been taken, as well as 1,500 cigarettes, which I don't know. Again, just go into a convenience store and just steal 1,000 cigarettes, as well as £400. It's not really worth it to kill a whole human
It's
being.
definitely not worth it, but I would say that if you were robbing a convenience store, the things of value would be cigarettes and alcohol.
That's also true. That's
Like, you're
also
not going
true.
to go after the Pringles, are you?
Well, no, obviously
I
not.
mean,
And
we
you could
might.
sell. Definitely love a Pringle, and they're so expensive these
They are
days.
so expensive. If ever a convenience store has been robbed and all that goes missing is the Labrador, the Pringles, and the Galaxy bars,
Hands up,
it was us.
it was us.
If it's the cigarettes and alcohol, honestly, I'm not that fussed.
Yeah,
Not
I
for me.
can't help you. Can't help
Can't
you with
help you
that
there.
one.
But, you know, the Labrador, the Galaxy, and the Pringles, that was me. That sounds like a great weekend.
Yeah, to be fair, I wouldn't have locked the dog upstairs. I would have taken him with me.
Oh, me and him would have been great friends.
Yeah,
Unless
there's
you
no way
hurt
he would.
Carol, because then he wouldn't like you.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. So at the scene, as well as obviously all of this evidence of a break-in and Carol's murder, like I said, the only notable evidence that they found were 2 small fingerprints and several bloody footprints. And they said small fingerprints, but they didn't really specify whether this is because they were partial fingerprints or if they were just small in size in terms of them
They're
being a small
person.
hand. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was they were only ever described as small, but it didn't really specify in which way. So anyway, Brian Prickett, who was the detective chief superintendent, was the head of this investigation.
And Prickett.
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 Oh, Prickett. Over the course of the next few weeks, Prickett's team interviewed 1,200 different people and took over 600 witness statements. Local men from the young as 14 were asked to submit their fingerprints to be able to be ruled out of the investigation. There were lots of people living nearby. It was quite a dense area for
densely
people.
populated area.
Exactly, yeah. So people who are living on neighbouring streets, they were all being interviewed to see if they had seen anything, if they had interacted with anyone, seen anything out of the ordinary. Again, taking fingerprints of so many people just to see if they could be ruled out or considered in this investigation.
I have a question.
So, go on.
You said this was Bedfordshire.
Yeah.
Where's Bedfordshire?
So this all actually happened in a town called Leighton Buzzard, which is in Linslade,
That's near Milton Keynes.
Which is near. It's kind of between Milton Keynes and Watford. Milton Keynes and Luton. About a similar distance from Milton Keynes as it is to Luton, and which is kind of like northwest to London. About halfway between London and Birmingham.
Okay.
If that helps. So yeah, that's where they were. So yeah, so this whole investigation was pretty extensive. They even got a forensic hypnotist in to speak to people involved in the investigation to see if they could remember more crucial details, but nothing really helped. It was them trying to remember if they...
What does a forensic hypnotist do?
So they're basically trying to... So if somebody had said, oh, yes, I saw a man walking suspiciously that day, they could then
It's getting into the subconscious.
And say, can
Right.
you tell me what they were wearing, tell me how they were walking, can you see his eyes, can you, like, trying to get some more information about that, you know, try and unlock that subconscious, like you said.
Yeah.
Well, that's at least how I understand it.
Yeah. I've had hypnotherapy, and
yes, yeah,
that's, yeah.
Interesting. So, I mean, I've never heard of that being used in a case before, but
it makes sense though, because there's so many details that you can't like recall, and
yeah,
I don't know how effective it is. I wouldn't like speak on how reliable it is or anything like that. And I do know that
in a court or something.
Exactly, and I do know that an eyewitness testimony is not necessarily the most reliable. However, if it was to get out a detail, let's say,
exactly,
and then it led to something, and then you could prove it, you know, then you find the DNA evidence or whatever it might be, then I can see its use. I can't imagine you being like, oh, yes, it was a man in a yellow jacket, and that being evidence in a court of law.
Yeah, it's true.
Would be my kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. But I mean, in this case, it didn't really help. It didn't really add much to the investigation. So although it was used because they wanted to get as much information as they can, because like I said, this was brutal, it didn't really help move their investigation along in any way. Naturally, Brian Prickett looked into Alan Morgan, as you would, because I think in our last episode you were saying about how most domestic murders include the other partner.
First the partner, and then it's someone you know. It's 90% of the time, I think, roughly, don't quote me on that number, but 90% of the time, someone you know. The partner is obviously first suspect, always.
Yeah, always going to be. But obviously with an airtight alibi, he was at the cinema for 4 or 5 hours with his stepkids. There is no way he could have been in the area to commit the murder. Both the kids were there with him. He had the tickets. They couldn't have got to the cinema without him. So, yeah, he was clear. There was no way that he could have done it.
And it wasn't like he slipped off to the pub while they watched the movie.
Exactly.
Like
they were
sat
in
the
Luton.
restaurant. Yeah. They all watched a film together. It's not like
a double bill of a film. Yeah. I mean, at most, maybe he went to the bathroom, but there was no way he could have got from Luton to Leighton Buzzard exactly in that time without somebody noticing. But despite this, lots of people noted him acting kind of weird. I mean, I know that there's no way of knowing how you're going to react in this situation, but I mean, even I could... Some of the things that I was reading, I'm kind of like, I hate him.
Go on.
So in some interviews, he described himself as a womanizer. Right after your wife had been murdered. Like, in an interview
is he trying to get ahead of the affair?
Perhaps, but why would you even describe yourself as a womanizer?
No, you wouldn't. You would just say, I was having an affair.
Exactly. I don't know anyone who would describe themselves as a womanizer on a normal day, let alone when you're being interviewed after your wife has been murdered.
No.
Weird. And then someone was asking about, how do you feel? Like, how's this affected you? Are you doing okay? And he complained about the loss of earning from the shop since the shop has had to be closed down.
Oh, how annoying.
Not about how heartbroken he is that his wife has been murdered in said shop, but how he hasn't been able to make as much money because they've had to close the shop because there's an ongoing investigation.
Devil's advocate, because the womanizer one, I can't devil's advocate that one. But the money one, I do. Not that I would say it, but I am very much the kind of person where if someone were to die, the practical things would stress me out before the reality of what happened hit me. I don't think I would grieve until the funeral and everything is done. Do you know what I mean? You can't, because once I broke down, I've broken down. I can't get back up again.
Yeah, but then equally, I think that you would be a little bit more self-aware.
Oh, yeah. I wouldn't say it.
Yeah, exactly. In front of a camera in front of a
Yeah, or
a
you would say
news
like, I've
reporter.
actually not processed it yet. Obviously this is having a massive detrimental effect on our life,
Yeah,
but I don't feel like I've quite processed my wife's death yet.
yeah. You would say everything, but I'm a womanizer and I haven't got any money left. Like I don't know. It just doesn't. Okay. And so the reporter during this interview, I actually read that he had tried to kind of move the conversation to get him to say something a little bit more personal to kind of give him
Well, to sell
a
newspapers, we want a crying, grieving
no,
widow.
not even. It was kind of like he was shocked that he had given such like
Oh, so it wasn't
a
even for money.
cold response.
Oh,
He wanted to get something more out of him that was, I don't know, just kind of give him a bit of
personality.
reason. Yeah, and just to be like, okay, maybe he isn't a cold-hearted bastard. Maybe he is. He did just kind of like he's not thinking. So he was trying to lead him a little bit more and ask about,
Have we
I
got
don't know,
eyes on this
have a
girlfriend?
bit of a humanity. And he was just nothing. He just kept on giving the same kind of responses. And the reporter was like, okay,
We gave you a
okay,
chance. What do you want?
yeah, you fucked it.
Have we got eyes on the girlfriend?
As in, like, right this second.
I'm
Oh, the
saying.
whole thing. So,
Mm,
no, she doesn't really come into this investigation at all. Really. Um,
sloppy.
but one of the things, so he actually moved in with this girlfriend 2 weeks after Carol's death,
The
and
one he was
then
having an affair with, that he
the
said the affair was
one,
over.
the one that he was having an affair with, that he said he didn't want to be with her anymore. But she was also married, so she left her husband and her kids to move in with
Is her
Alan.
husband alive?
I don't
It
know
didn't come
actually.
up. He
Didn't
didn't die in a
again.
brutal murder.
Didn't come up. They didn't. They didn't find it relevant. Her name is Margaret Spooner, but I'm going to call her Margaret because later on she changes their name to Margaret Morgan. But because there are so many Morgans right now, I'm just going to refer to her as Margaret, so we know who she is. So they moved in with each other 2 weeks after the death, and they got married a year after that. So all very suspicious on
Did
Alan's
the
part.
kids go
Everyone was.
with him?
Yes, yeah, and they moved up north, and so they didn't have any contact with their grandparents, like Carol's parents, after that. And they even supposedly wrote letters to their grandparents saying, "We're having a great life, but we don't want to see you again." And there was lots of talk around this to say that Alan was the one that made them write these letters because he didn't want to have anything to do with Carol's family. So Carol's grandparents had just lost their Carol's parents lost their daughter, but then also just lost their
Lost their
grandkids and didn't
grandchildren.
didn't see them for years and years because they moved way up north to Yorkshire. So yeah, it was a very sad time for them and their personal statements. What was the word that when they say
Victim impact statements?
victim impact statements? Yes, that's the one. Um, specifically mentioned that how hard it was for them to lose their daughter and lose contact with their grandkids as well. So
That's
very
awful.
horrible, horrible time. Yeah. So back to the investigation. One of the witness statements, I told you that they took 600 witness statements and interviewed thousands of people. But one of the witness statements that was most noticeable was that they mentioned seeing a man leaving the shop at around 7 p.m. So this was around 2 hours after Alan had left. And he was carrying two shopping bags and acting really suspiciously, always looking over his shoulder. She said that she was in a phone box on the phone to one of her friends because that's what you do in the 1980s. You're just in the phone box having a chat. And she was speaking to her friend, so she wasn't fully paying attention, but she got a good look at this man. And she said that she noticed that at one point, he dropped a bag and some money fell out, like a £5 note and a couple of coins. And he
Okay.
like quickly picked it all up and got into his car that was parked a little ways down the street. So she saw him getting into the car, always looking over his shoulder, and then just drive away. And she didn't really think anything of it until obviously she heard the news. And so she gave this witness statement. She described the man and she described the car, which was a green Ford Estate car. She didn't get anything more than that, like a number plate or anything like that. But this actually ended up having 28,000 dark green estate cars being tracked in an effort to find this man. 28,000. This was obviously an incredibly popular car at the
A
time.
green Ford estate car in the 80s, yeah.
Yeah, tell me about it. Tell me about it. And so with this as well, they obviously
Can you imagine if it was today and they were like, right, guys, we're looking for a black Ford Fiesta. Go.
There would be the queues of people being interviewed for something like that.
We're looking for a man who looks dodgy, who drives a black Ford Fiesta. Be like, roll up Lewisham.
Yeah, tell me about it. I would have a few people on my list to be handed into the police, for sure.
My favourite thing ever is, like, in true crime documentaries and stuff, is as soon as a sketch goes out or they appeal to people for help, most of the tips come in from wives and girlfriends and ex-wives and ex-girlfriends being like, right, my ex, I don't think he was anything to do with this, but he's a real dodgy one. Like, can you just come and take him? Because honestly, I've had enough of this man. If he leaves the toilet seat up one more time.
I realise that I don't really pay attention to anything that's going on around me when I'm out and about. But now, since listening to true crime, I try and take note of people's faces. And I look at somebody's face and I think, how would I describe how they look? And I'm making a mental note. And just, it's not that I think that anything's going to happen to you, because I live in a super quiet area in the middle of nowhere. And
don't say that.
It's like... Touch wood.
Don't say it's a place that you don't have to lock your doors.
We do lock our doors, but I feel safe here, which is probably the worst thing to say at a time like this. But
my life.
Not that I think that anything's going to happen to me, but now I think it's just a good exercise to look at people in the face. It's so natural for us humans to avoid eye contact and to not look at anyone for a prolonged period of time, because people think that you're weird. But I just kind of look at people and I think, oh, like...
You're going to be if anything goes wrong, they're going to be like, right, there's this really suspicious woman.
And she just makes eye contact with everyone.
Eye contact with everyone. And like, then she kind of mutters under her breath, big nose, dark eyes, wonky tooth. Yeah. That's going to be you. You're going to be the person that comes up.
That's literally what I do. I think it's a really good mental exercise, to be honest.
I don't do that, but what I do...
You take pictures of everyone as you're walking down the street. You have a dash cam on your chest.
I wanted to get the glasses that do that. Can you imagine? I would just be like, wow, this person's pissing me off. Record. I would have so much fun with that. But no, if I hear, I mean, I have barely left my bed or my house in like a year. So if I hear a dodgy noise, I'm like, 7:02 p.m. So if anything ever happens, they're like, did you hear anything? I'll be like, well, actually at 7:02 p.m. I did hear.
I can imagine you with like one of those little voice recorders being like, 7:02, had my dinner, nothing strange on the street at the moment.
Bin men arrived late. Yes. But the problem is, most of the time it's just foxes having sex. Like, honestly, the amount of times I think someone is dying outside my house and you look out and there's two foxes like...
But do you remember that time when we were at home? Were you at home at the time? And they threw the police dog into our garden to, like, search the garden.
My
and
God.
Then the policeman jumped over.
To the front of the door. And we screamed. Okay.
Oh my God, so terrifying.
Let's actually explain what happened. So Rosie and I lived together. And Leo was at my parents'. It was just the two of us in the house. And I think, I'd gone to drop him off. And then the next door neighbour called me and was like, there's helicopters going around. There's a man running around with
They've said, don't leave the house. Yeah.
With an axe. Don't leave the house. And I was like, well, I've got to. I'm coming home. So my neighbour met me at the car, walked me into the house, and then... Our house had like windows at the front, but also in our living room you could see through to our back garden. So we didn't want to sit at the front or the back because then we were close to the windows and exposed. So we sat in the middle, terrified. Why didn't we just go to bed? What a pair of weirdos. Yeah. We sat in the middle, terrified, and then all of a sudden, a dog gets thrown over our back fence, and there was like 8 police officers, and I was like, "Oh my God, I haven't."
Because another policeman also launched themselves over into the back garden.
So we were like, "Oh my God, there's police!" And then all of a sudden, we turned to the front garden, and there's a man. we're gonna die. Tell the dog he's in the front garden.
Oh
And
my
then
God.
we saw this man. He was like, don't worry, I'm a police officer. And I was like, I wasn't worried until you were there. Like,
Yeah. Oh my gosh. But then the police dog just like ran around the garden, launched itself back out again, and then the man that did the same and just like basically like popped himself over into the next garden. And we were like, what the bloody hell is going on? Like,
that was wild.
What? It was so scary. It was, we were terrified, genuinely terrified. Back to the story. Are you okay? Do you need a minute?
No, it's fine.
Take a breather.
No, I'm going to stop talking over you now. This is your story. I just get so excited, and I actually do have a health condition with my chest, so I can't. I'm like,
Is this a bad time to ask for your help looking at this?
No, I can do that. I can do that. Okay.
So as I said, they did actually get a description of this man, and they put together a picture of using a description. They called it an EFIT. I've not heard of it being called an EFIT before. Have you heard of it being called an EFIT? I have,
yeah. But I'm going to be honest. What is
shit,
this? It looks like they've cut out. Leo did a project where they cut out different eyes, nose, and mouth, and
like
just
a
put
collage.
them all together.
Yeah,
like a collage.
Yeah.
That's what this looks like. Yeah.
Basically. Yeah.
Can I read the description?
If you can, I did type it out again, but because I know that it's not
white
great.
male, aged 21, 5'7" or 8 tall, something build.
Slim build.
Okay, slim build, light brown, wavy, mousy coloured hair, collar length at back and short at sides. Is that a mullet?
Well, yeah, but in the picture it doesn't look short on the sides, does it?
No, but collar length is like down to here, so that's a mullet. So it's short here, but that's a clean shaven, round face, wide piggy nostrils.
If somebody gave a description of me and I was wanted for murder and they gave a description of me and I read that they had piggy nostrils, I would be fuming, and I would literally give myself in just so I could prove that I do not have piggy nostrils.
Very fair eyebrows, as if non-existent.
Again, I can see but eyebrows on this picture.
That's very dark eyebrows. What?
Very dark eyebrows, yeah.
Wearing faded denim jeans, slightly flared, with a black belt, white shirt with sleeves rolled up, watch on left wrist with wide silver band. They got a very good look at him.
They did get a very good look at him. But one of the biggest things that they stuck to was the piggy nostrils. That was something that everybody was talking about in all of the reports, all of the newspapers. People really fixated on these piggy nostrils. But the thing is that when I'm mad, Jack always says that I flare my nostrils when I'm mad or when I'm lying. And so if he's stressed, and he's just like, some people do that when they're stressed, you know? So was he just, oh no, I can't stop doing it. Was he just stressed, or did he just have pea nostrils? Who knows? So even with the description of this man and the description of the car, and with both of them together, no arrests were made. And even after 2 years of investigation with some of the country's best forensic teams and over 60 officers, which was a huge investigation, the case eventually went cold. So in around 1983, that was about 2 years after the murder happened. No arrests, no real developments, no leads, no suspects were named, nothing. So the Bedfordshire, Cambridgeshire and Hertfordshire Police Department has a policy that every cold case must be reviewed every 2 years, which I think is a great policy. I don't know if all police departments have that kind of policy, but I was really interested to hear that they did that, and they did it consistently as well. There were reports on their developments every year and whether they made any leads and how it had moved forward. So
I wonder if they have like a specific cold case team.
So I didn't hear about a specific cold case team until 2018 when they officially reopened it. So I don't know if it was something that everyone just kind of took on cold cases depending on when they came up periodically, or if they had a designated team that tried to review them every 2 years. But anyway, it was looked at every 2 years from 1983 until now. But nothing new ever came up until in 2018, Carl Foster headed the cold case unit that reopened the investigation and sought to interview more witnesses and re-examine some of the evidence. In a lot of the reports that I had found, around 2018, 2019, they had actually put calls out for people to get in contact with the police. It wasn't that they thought that they were suspects, they just thought that they were in a position to be able to give some more information. So they were putting all of these things out, asking people to come forward. And then it was reported in, I don't actually know when it was. It must have been, I think it was 2021, that two people in their 70s had been arrested. But then they were released pending further investigations. There were no formal identification of these people were made. But if you think that Carol Morgan was in her 30s when she was murdered, and so 40 years later, nearly, in their 70s, that would be about the age of Alan and Margaret Spooner, now Morgan. So, I mean, a lot of people were assuming that this was Alan and his new wife, who had been together this entire time. So it was important to know that they didn't.
Can I just ask a question about that?
Yeah.
Are they saying that Alan set it up, or are they saying that Alan's alibi is not?
They're just they did at this point. They had
he's just involved.
At this point, the police didn't let anything go. Like they didn't. They didn't really let on at all.
The people who think that it's Alan, like, all of the local people and whatnot, they're like, Alan and his wife, they're shifty.
It's not that they think that he did it. They just think that maybe he knows more than he was letting on. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so, there were lots of conspiracies going around and people kind of adding things up and putting things together to say, we think it was this, that, or the other. But the police didn't really didn't really give anything away. And it wasn't until June 2023 that an official arrest was made, and Alan Morgan and Margaret Spooner, now Morgan, had been arrested for conspiracy to murder Carol Morgan back in 1981. This was huge. Like, some people obviously saw it coming, but nobody really saw it coming. It was out of nowhere. And it was important to know that they didn't think Alan or Margaret were the actual killers, but they believed they had arranged and paid for someone to come in and kill Carol while Alan had taken the kids to the cinema.
So it gives him an airtight alibi, but and because they're paying someone, and this is completely like a guess, if they were paying someone and that person is almost like a professional, then it's not a case of, everyone gets caught because they like tell someone. You can't keep your mouth shut. Which is great, keep blabbing. But I'm saying if it was a professional person, they don't need to brag about it. They're not. Oh, okay, right. I see this.
Exactly. But so obviously they opened this in 2018. They reopened the investigation in 2018. Didn't make an arrest until 2023. So this was 5 years of additional investigation that good old Carl Foster was able to complete. And
so did he take over from Prickett?
He took over from Prickett. And Prickett actually came out of retirement around the time they were doing the investigation to try and pull everything together, because he was really invested in this story and bringing someone to justice. So these 5 years, they really spent time looking at financial evidence and the witness evidence. And they found that Alan and Carol had actually been suffering with financial troubles before Carol's death. The shop wasn't really doing as well as they'd hoped, and yet Alan had withdrawn £900 over the few days before Carol's murder. There wasn't any trace of this money after the fact, and for someone who's suffering with financial problems, that's a lot of money to be taking out at any one time. And also, the secret drawer that was in the desk, it only could have been opened by a very specific way that really only Carol or Alan could have known about. And I mean, people were wondering whether even Carol knew how to open this drawer. So everyone's thinking that this person who murdered Carol must have had some kind of insider knowledge, whether it was Alan telling him, if you go and kill her, I'll give you this money, and then you could also get another £400 that's in this drawer. You have to open it like this. So a random person wouldn't have even known that random drawer was there, let alone how to open it. So they think, their theory was that they'd staged it as a robbery gone wrong. That was the theory, the working theory. Yeah. It was told in court that Alan said that he couldn't divorce Carol because of financial problems, but he could financially gain from Carol's death because her life insurance would have paid off his debt. They both had life insurance for, I can't remember how much.
Sorry, has he admitted that, or is that from the prosecution?
It's not. That was from the prosecution.
Oh, I was going to say, okay. So they know that they have life insurance policies, ergo, prosecution can say that.
Exactly. So once he paid off his debt, he could then sell the shop and then move away with his new wife, taking the kids and away from their grandparents. So he obviously, if he were to just sell his shop now without having this life insurance, then all of that money would have just gone straight to his debt, and he wouldn't have any money to be able to start a new life. So he really needed to pay off that debt to be able to get the money from the shop and then move away and start his new life. So that was really a necessary requirement. And even beforehand, before Carol had died, apparently they'd had a conversation about selling the shop and buying a new one further afield to get him away from his mistress and to start a new life away together somewhere, and they couldn't because he was obviously in debt. So many witnesses had also said how it was really unusual for Alan to take the kids out, especially without Carol, because none of them ever knew him to do that. So that was already quite suspicious, and no one had really taken note of that in the first few years of this investigation, because again, how could it possibly have been Alan, because he was out, like he couldn't have murdered her. So no one was really thinking about conspiracy to murder. They were just looking for the murderer. So when they were looking back into this,
so he wasn't like some doting stepfather who was taking the kids out.
Yeah, no, they very much believe that he organised that whole trip, a double bill at the cinema, for him to be out of the house for 5 hours, just for someone to come in 2 hours later, kill his wife, and give him an airtight alibi.
Yeah.
Because apparently the kids didn't even want to go out with him that day, because they were like, we don't go with you. We don't go anywhere without Alma.
We don't like you.
We don't like you. What are you doing? Exactly. So, yeah, it was very weird at the time. But the one witness that came forward that was absolutely pivotal in the case and in the conviction, her name was Jane Bunting, and she was 17 at the time of the murder in 1981. And she hadn't come forward due to her loyalty to Margaret, because Margaret was some kind of a mentor to her at the time. They were, it just said mentor. It didn't really specify in which capacity, but she had a strong loyalty to Margaret, so she hadn't come forward at the time. But she stated that Alan Morgan had directly asked her if she knew anyone that would kill his wife for him.
What is wrong with him? Why is he asking a 17-year-old girl?
Because apparently she had a boyfriend that used to be in prison, and so he thought that she would have some connections to this man that had been in prison. And he openly discussed ways of killing his wife and what would and would not be viable with this 17-year-old girl.
I do think that's ridiculous then, that she didn't come forward because of loyalty to Margaret.
Yeah, and get this, she said they went and knocked on her door, found her, knocked on her door, trying to find new statements. And you know what she said to them? She said, I've been waiting for you to visit me for 40 years.
That's pathetic.
Why wait for them to come to you?
So that couple was able to live their entire lives, because let's be honest, going to prison when you're 70, you've lived most of your life. You ruined the lives of those two babies. I know they weren't babies, but they were babies. They were 14 and 12, losing their mum. You ruined their life. You took them away from everyone that they know. And you...
I mean, let's not get this wrong. Jane Bunting was not the person that took them away from their family.
No,
she was 17, and I know that at 17, I would have been scared to go forward with some information like that.
I understand.
Whether or not I had
but
the basic reasoning to be able to understand that. Yes, 40 years 40 is a long time.
Years. Okay, but when you get... Maybe I was an idiot when I was 17, but I'm now 30, and one day, I'm now 30, I would be like, do you know what? That was wrong. I wouldn't have the police coming to my door and being like, yeah, 40 years I've been waiting. Where have you
Woo!
lot been?
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
because they have lived their whole life and she didn't get justice. Even if they
It's
get
true.
convicted and go to prison for the rest of their life, her and her children did not get justice.
Yeah. Yeah. And she didn't do her part to help the investigation because she doesn't know what kind of a difference that would have made back in the day. But anyway,
Oh, man.
Alan was found guilty, and I was reading about the statements around the sentencing, and they said, I didn't realize that when you convict someone of a crime that was done in the past, they have to calculate the sentencing based on what would have been normal at that time. So they had to take a lot of different things into consideration based on what was normal in 1981 and how that would.
So what year is he being sentenced in?
In 2024, July 2024. So they basically took other cases and how they were charged, and
At the
also
time,
looking
yeah.
into different mitigating circumstances around his situation now and the brutality of the killing and all of that kind of things. He took a lot of things into consideration.
Am I correct in thinking conspiracy to commit a crime is just as bad as having committed the crime itself?
I mean, both served life imprisonment, so both.
Must be then.
So I guess
did they ever
yeah.
find out who was the hitman?
No, they did not. But I mean, Alan got the minimum term served was 22 years, less the 40 days that he had been in remand. So it was 22 years to life that he will be in prison, and that was last year, and he's 74 now. But Margaret was acquitted, so they believe that she didn't have anything to do with it. Whether or not she knew after the fact, again, it didn't specify what her involvement in anything. They just said that she was not guilty of conspiracy to murder. And 44 years later, did she though? You don't know.
Yeah, her little friend said he openly talked about it. So why was he openly talking about it to her buddy and not her? She knew about it.
This is true.
She must have.
Okay, but they said that she was not guilty, so.
Okay, she might not be guilty, but she knew about it, and she just. I'm sorry, no. If you marry someone and they're like, oh, I just killed my wife because I was in a bit of debt, and you just go, yes, no problem, sweetheart. What would you like to do?
It was highly convenient, wasn't it? That they just happened to need money and to get rid of his wife to be able to move on with their lives, and then she just ended up dead. But 44 years later, the actual murderer has still never been identified, and they've said they're no closer to finding him now as they were in 1981. But that part of the investigation does remain open. But some officers have said that it's likely that they'll never know who it was. And Alan is the only person alive who knows who killed Carol Morgan. They don't know if this man is dead, if they don't know where he's from.
He won't say anything.
He has not said a word. So
what a weasel.
Yeah. But then this is the thing. This is what makes me think, does Margaret know anything about it? Because if he's kept quiet about the man who he hired to kill his wife for 44 years, would he have said something to his current wife? I just not
on
not
that
convinced.
principle. I would agree with you. However, if he went to a 17-year-old and said, "Oh, do you know anyone to kill my wife?" He obviously wasn't exactly being coy about the whole thing. Plus, if he moved in with her 2 weeks afterwards, he hasn't broken up with her. Like, they're still together. So
they've been together the entire time.
Yeah, I don't buy it. I think she must have known something. Even if she doesn't know who actually carried it out, she knew something. She knew more than she let on.
And there was somebody who had also said that they saw someone boasting in a pub about a job that they had done in Leighton Buzzard for £400 or something like that.
They always do this.
Yeah, and that they had also seen that same person talking to Alan on multiple times before that, but nothing ever. I saw that kind of come up a couple of times, but there was nothing in any reports that actually suggested that this man had anything to do with it. So whether that was hearsay or an actual
and it's not even like they can get any kind of bank transfers. Like, this would have all been cash.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they could see that he withdrew all of that money
Yeah,
and they
but
knew how much was taken out of the drawer, but yeah, they have no idea what happened to it after
how
that.
did they solve crimes before, like CCTV, DNA,
Genuinely.
phone signals,
Exactly.
whatever? Like, how
And
did they
that's
do
what's
it?
so interesting about this case, is that it didn't, a lot of the evidence that they had was all based on witness statements. They didn't have any forensic, any DNA evidence. It was just about witness statements and that financial trail, albeit very small, very limited. But that was how they were able to convict him. And perhaps that was how Margaret
Did
was
he ever admit
acquitted.
to it?
No.
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 I just think it's
But
unfair because he got his whole life.
yeah, yeah. What I hate is that those kids, Jane, the 12-year-old, she grew up relying on these adults with like Alan and Margaret. She grew up with them and they raised her, and she lived with them for the rest of her life. And she,
Where
like,
did
Margaret
Dean go?
Margaret no, he was there as well, but he didn't give a statement after the fact.
Oh, okay.
But Jane gave a statement saying that Margaret was there helping her with the birth of her first child and really supported her throughout adulthood. And now she's found out that her stepdad actually murdered her mother, and she just they've been lying to her their entire lives.
Yeah.
So I
Such
imagine how
a...
hard that is for the kids, for them to deal with. It's a lot for them to.
Never trust anybody.
No,
I
it's a
mean,
shame. But that is the end of my Carol Morgan story. I hope you enjoyed it.
I really liked that one. I'm really glad that they got some closure and they got some justice. So
Next week?
it's not next week. Friday.
No,
It's
well, this will
Friday,
come out on
Friday. Gotta
Friday,
get down
and
on
then
Friday.
next week you are
Monday.
telling me a story. Yes.
Do you remember that song?
Yeah, Rebecca
Yeah,
Black,
that was
wasn't it?
awful.
Absolute back. Yeah. Oh.
Oh.
Oh, God.
So next week, which we're actually going to record tomorrow,
Yeah.
you are going to hear all about Muriel McKay.
Ready?
And this one is wild. Wild,
Ready?
wild. And I'm so excited.
I'm looking forward to it.
Me too. Oh, okay. I love doing this with you.
Me too. It's just nice having a chat as well. It's nice.
It's nice having a chat and
being unemployed and then also you being ill. We're not getting out enough and having like the social interactions, and we are such chatty people that I feel like this is really good for our mental health as well. I'm loving it. I really am.
I get out of bed for this and then I go back to bed. And then I get into bed and I research and I edit. So
yeah,
it's actually my favourite thing in the world.
Yeah, it really is. But now we just have to make it a living out of it.
Please go follow us on everything. We are
26 to Life Pod or 26 to Life _pod, depending on where you're looking.
26 to Life Pod on YouTube and Spotify, and 26 to Life _pod on TikTok and Instagram. And Rosie is in charge of our TikTok and Instagram, and she really struggles with social media, but you have to remember that we are old now. So
yeah, and I hate it.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
What day is it today? Happy Monday.
Happy Monday. See ya.
Bye.
See ya.